Okay, on 2-1, what did we do? You guys remember? No? Graphed parabolas. Yes, we did. And we used what we learned in chapter 1 to do that. Remember when we said up or down, left or right, vertical stretch or shrink, reflection, all that kind of stuff. That's what we did in chapter 1, or section 1. We did the same thing we did in chapter 1, in section 1 of chapter 2. So, those are the types of problems that are going to be on your quiz tomorrow. Just so that you guys have this idea down, there are 10 questions on the quiz. Very short. Very similar to last chapter, where there's only 10 questions. On the first ones it says, describe the transformations that take place. What are they asking you to do when they ask you to describe it? Tell what's happening. How do you know what's happening? Okay, if you have something like this, for instance, where you have a negative on the outside, what does a negative on the outside tell you? Reflection over the x-axis. What about if there's a number in this position right here? Multiplied. That's outside. So that is a vertical stretch or shrink, depending on if the number is above 1 or between 0 and 1. What if it's above 1? Then it's a vertical stretch. What if it's a fraction? It's a vertical shrink. Then you had a parentheses. Then you could potentially have a negative there. What does that negative refer to? A reflection over the y-axis. Do you necessarily see the y-axis reflection if it's the original one? No. Then what happens if you have a number in this location? Not vertical at all. That's horizontal. When it's inside, that's horizontal on that particular thing. So a horizontal what? A horizontal stretch or shrink, depending on the number. If the number is greater than 1, it is this time not a stretch, but a shrink. And if the number is between 0 and 1, it's a stretch. But when you report it, do you report the number that's there or the reciprocal of that number? The reciprocal. Then the x would come into play. Then what if you have a plus or minus and then the number in this location?
Left or right.
That goes left or right. Then you'll have a squared and then a plus or minus in this location. What happens when you have a number plus or minus on the outside?
Up or down.
Up or down. Can you describe it? Okay, what that's asking you for on the first 3, it says, describe the transformation that takes place. That's what you have to tell me. Did it go up? Did it go down? Did it go left? Did it go right? Did it vertically stretch, vertically shrink? Did it reflect? All that stuff that we did in chapter 1, that's what the first 3 are asking you to do. There's all the different locations that you can have. We talked about this isn't new. We did everything in chapter 1, plus we did it again in section 1. All that is the same. When it's asking you to describe it, it's asking you for what's happening. Up 3, left 4, reflection over the y-axis or x-axis, vertically stretched by whatever. Okay? That's what it's asking you to write. Is everybody okay with that? The second half of chapter or section 1 gave you the parent and then asked you to put in the new pieces. So what if I gave you, well, guess what parent is going to be for every single one of these? Quadratic is every parent for all these. So what if I asked you to write one that said up 3, left 4, reflection over the x-axis? What would you write? Okay, you need to put the pieces in place. So you told me that this was the reflection over the x-axis, so you should have a negative on the outside of the grouping symbol. I never said anything about stretching or shrinking, so you would have nothing in this spot, you'd have nothing in this spot, and nothing in that spot, because I didn't say reflected over the y-axis either. But I did say a right or left number, and I did say an up or down number, so then you'd have spaces in here and in here. Okay? Can you put those things in? That's questions 4 and 5. So in the first three, they're asking you to tell me what's happening with the words describing them. And then the second two give you the description, now you write the equation. Can you do that? You guys were pretty good about that in chapter 1 on that test. That was one of the parts that you guys did really well on. So I'm not concerned too much with that. 10. Six and 7. Says graph the function, label the vertex and axis of symmetry. Okay? You were given in chapter or section 2, you were given 3 forms. You were given this form, f of x equals a x minus h, the quantity squared, plus k. Then you were given this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And then the third form you were given, a x minus p, x minus q. If I give you 2 of them and ask you to graph it, it's going to be 2 out of the 3. Okay? The top one, what did I call that name? What was that called when it was written like that? It started with a V and ended in vertex. Vertex form, good. Okay, it's vertex form. Is vertex form ultimately the same thing as what we did in section 1? Where the number on the inside told me to go right or left, the number on the outside tells me to go up or down? Okay, good. When it's in vertex form, the vertex is h and k. That's what you have to pull out of that. What's the axis of symmetry? H in the first one. What's the A tell you? Let me ask you this question. What's the A going to tell you for every one of those forms? The A tells you one of 2 things. Does anybody remember? Up or down. Okay? The A is going to tell you whether or not it's opening up or whether it's opening down. When is it going to open up? If your number is positive. When is it going to open down? If your number is negative. Again, on 6 and 7 it says graph and label the axis of symmetry and the vertex. Okay? So as far as the first, if it's in the first form, that's your vertex and your axis of symmetry. For the next one, standard form, how did you find the vertex? You spent a lot of time on this yesterday. Negative b over 2a. That gives you the x coordinate of the vertex. What else is the x coordinate for all these? Do you remember, Hunter? No? What's the x coordinate? I asked you for 2 things on the graph. The axis of symmetry and the vertex. What's the x coordinate the same as? No. It's the axis of symmetry. The x coordinate of the vertex is always the axis of symmetry. That's the one line that goes right down the middle. Okay? How do you find the y coordinate of the vertex? Plug it in. Y chord. Plug it in. What do you plug it into? You plug it into the equation, right? So, once you have the vertex like that, and you have the axis of symmetry, you have one dot, and you have this line going down the middle where it should be. How do you get a second and third dot? If I'm graphing it, how did you get the second and third dot? Plug in a number. Where, Savannah? Anywhere you want? Probably. Right, close to where the axis of symmetry is. Okay? You want to be close, because remember, if you go too far away, the number's going to be off the grid. And the grids on there are big enough, they should be big enough to graph any of them. Okay? But if you pick one that's close to it, you should be okay. Should be on there. If you pick one further away from it, it's going to be off the page. Or potentially could be. Then, the last form was called intercepts form. What are the P and the Q? Good. The P and the Q are the x-intercepts. In order to find the axis of symmetry when it's in this type of scenario, you take whatever is in P plus whatever is in Q and divide it by 2. What is the axis of symmetry? It's also the x-coordinate of the vertex. Then how do you find the y-coordinate? Plug it in. Right. 6 and 7 are going to ask you to graph, label the axis of symmetry and the vertex. Bryce, what happens if you just graph it?
You don't get the full point.
Right, because you didn't actually label those pieces. I left lines underneath there where you can just write it down. Okay? Or if you're one of those people that like to label it right in the graph, that's fine too. But you gotta label it. Otherwise you won't get all the points for it. That's what 6 and 7 are asking you to do. Then, 8 and 9 talk about the intercepts and asking you whether it's increasing versus decreasing. And this is the part that we learned the other day. Okay? So if I gave you something that wanted for increasing and decreasing, if you've got a parabola that opens up, the main thing that we have to figure out is we have to figure out where that axis of symmetry goes. That is the part that you need to figure out. When it opens up, when it comes down the mountain like this, are we increasing or decreasing? We're decreasing on the left-hand side. When we say left, is that greater than or less than? Less than. So the x would be less than whatever was the h. Okay? Now you've turned and you've gone up the hill. Is up increasing or decreasing? Increasing on this side. And that would be x is greater than the h. Because now we're going to the right. Okay, the right side is greater, the left side is less. What if your parabola is one of those ones that goes down? Again, we find that line of symmetry right down the middle. And again, where does the line of symmetry go through? It goes through your vertex. It's the H. Is this first part increasing or decreasing? Increasing. So it's increasing on the left side. So then it goes x is less than h for increasing when it's going like that. Then on the other side, what would it be doing? Decreasing. And then it would be x is greater than whatever your h is if it's coming down the hill that way. If I ask you to find the pieces and then tell me if it's increasing or decreasing, the increasing and decreasing part, you guys, is this. Some of you guys did not do so hot on that on your assignment. You never even put that part. Okay, on that assignment, I'm going to hand it back to you guys in just a second. But on that assignment, there was parts of that where you guys didn't even do that when it asked for that. Okay, so then I had to mark it wrong because you didn't do that part. It's going to say things like find the intercepts. So how do you find the x-intercepts? And then it's going to say, tell me which side it's increasing and decreasing on. So that's two parts. And again, just like Bryce had made a comment on the last one, if you don't label it, you get part wrong. Okay? And the last one, what do you think 10 is? Word problem. Do you remember Mickey? Oh, I erased him because he didn't make it over the fence. Okay? It's very similar to that one. It's not Mickey Mouse jumping over into the fence, but it's similar to that. Where you would have to figure out, can it clear it, or how's the height, or anything else. How do you find the maximum, or the minimum? What's the formula we use? What's the formula to find the min or the max? I'll give you a hint. You did it probably on every problem on that worksheet that you did. Nope, not x squared. To find the min or the max, x equals negative b over 2a. That should be the first thing that you do. And then to actually find that minimum or maximum, what do you do with that number? Yeah, you plug it in. And then to find min or max, plug in number and simplify. Okay? Now, other than showing you exactly what the problems are, I just went through. This is exactly what it is. It's 1 through 10. I went through everything that you should need to know. That's why I wanted to do it. Make sure if you want to have a quarter sheet or a note card, you do that. If you don't want to, then that's up to you. Okay? But that's what you're going to be expected to do. Along with maybe a calculator and something to write with tomorrow. And your brains. All right, to practice this, if you go to page 66, did you get it? Are you sure? Okay. On page 66, just to kind of walk you through some of the stuff on here. Look what numbers 1 and 3 ask you to do. What do they ask you to do on 1 through 3? Wow, that's the same thing I said for the first 3 on your quiz. Then 4, 5, and 6, what does it ask you to do? Write the rule. Wow, isn't that the same thing I said for 4 and 5? Yeah, weird. Then 7, 8, and 9 says graph the function, label the vertex and axis of symmetry. That's just like 6 and 7. Weird. Then 10, 11, and 12. Find the x-intercepts of the graph, then describe where the function is increasing and decreasing. Huh. I don't know. 8 and 9. And then 14 is a problem just like Mickey Mouse not clearing the fence. So, if you can handle that, the quiz mirrors that. I hope you understand that. Okay? So,